Right, I will officially call the September 25th work session to order, and we'll let the minutes reflect that all of the board is in attendance, as well as a number of members of our staff and some distinguished audience that we may have an opportunity to hear from as we move on. We do have the minutes before us from the September 11th, 2019 meeting, and I would entertain a motion for those minutes.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, seeing no discussion, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Lisa, thank you, as always, thank you. We are up to date with our monthly reports. We have no public hearings this evening. We do have one guest this evening, and I'd invite Lori Kennedy for a discussion of a seasonal tent installation at K2 Brewery at 1221 Empire Boulevard. Jim has provided some information to the board, but I'd ask Jim if there's any additional comments that you would like to make to introduce this to the board.
Tony, Lori did contact me a couple weeks ago and did indicate that she would like to do, thank you, she would like to install, I think it's 2 tents we're looking for, not one, right? One tent is for like cornhole, championship type operation, and the other one is for the actual beer garden itself. So with that, I'll let you talk a little bit about what you want to do and the purpose of it.
So our desire is to kind of extend summer a little bit through winter. So during the months of November through February into the beginning of March, we were looking to put up a tent. It's more of a structure because we did find it's Hank Parker tent rentals. And as you can see, they do, it's a steel beam structure. So it's not as you would think of as a tent. Last year for our anniversary party in December, we did rent a tent, a regular tent, and put that up for a week, and that one would not be one that we would consider to be safe, for a longer period of time. So we did go looking, and we got in contact with, his name is Jacob, with Hank Parker Tent. They had bought it over quite a few years ago. I do have a book with some different types of pictures and structure type things they do, but it is steel beams. It is solid walls. There's some glass walls. There's actual glass doors that go into it. We are looking to cover part of the beer garden, but then we're looking to have another tent that would still be connected, but down further to cover our cornhole. Many have requested to be able to play cornhole throughout the winter, so we're looking to cover that so that we would have that option. Last year, like I said, we did it for our anniversary party, so we would have to put something up, and I know there's a 3-week limit, so that's why we were looking to see if we could get approval for a longer period of time.
So with that being said, I brought Lori in this evening, recognizing that in the past, whenever we had situations like this, whether it be music or outdoor entertainment or outdoor events, that we hold a public hearing for that. And the purpose of her coming this evening was to determine whether or not you had enough support to hold a public hearing, so the public can come out and make comment to you as to how they feel about it. If there was no intent on your part to do that, I didn't want to waste her time to come in and spend the money and all that business. So that's really the purpose of her visit this evening.
So Lori, I see the one tent, or so let me make sure that I understand. The one tent, I'm assuming, is 33 by 66.
Correct.
And then what is the size of the second tent?
It's about, he was trying to come up with dimensions, but we were guessing that it would be somewhere like a 30 by 30.
My question is, why do they call this a tent?
Right.
With solid walls and glass doors?
Honestly, I probably should have called him and asked him for different verbiage. In his book, he calls it a canopy.
And I don't have a concern about the structure itself, but whether we can consider it a tent for purposes of our deliberation as to whether to permit it or not.
Because it goes up and comes down, I mean, it's a movable structure. It does have a type of a canvas top, so therefore it falls under the tent category.
Jim, are there any other structures like this currently in the town that you are aware of?
I'm not aware of a structure such as this. Obviously, we have tents adjacent to dining areas in the town of Penfield, but they are technically, just tents.
That's why I was envisioning, it was like
It's like a
Baytown has.
three-season room. Yeah, and I think that it might
Yes.
be reasonable to request from the vendor, photographs of it and material specs, that type of thing.
I mean, the concept I don't have a problem with, I just want to make sure that we're consistent or we're not opening ourselves up to permitting anyone to call anything a tent.
I mean, this in essence could be a year-round structure. So what is the actual, or is the request like a 3-month?
From November through March, so it'd be 4 months.
And then you take it down.
Absolutely.
The beginning of November? November, December, January, February.
And then down at the beginning of March. We'd have it down before,
Okay.
what day is it, St. Patrick's Day?
How would you get out there to it from your building?
It would connect, there's,
Connect right into it, right again, up against it?
nope, there's a section that, for snow load, that he recommended that we have a distance apart so that the snow would be able to come off the existing building, the roof off the existing building. So it's out, I believe, about 10 feet, and then there would be a door that, it's actual glass doors. I can show you, but they're actual, it's, if you want to pass that around.
Oh, all right.
It's almost like glass doors. It's real doors that open up, double doors, that would open up and lead into it. So it'd go from ours, there'd be a structure in between it, and then the doors would open up
Like
to
an
the next
overhang or
one.
something.
How do you keep it warm?
No, it would be enclosed.
Okay.
We've already searched out, they're a type of a heater made, I'll pass a few more of these around.
So when you say they'd be enclosed, it would be right up to your building?
No, about 10 feet
10 feet
apart.
So if I walk out your side door, there'd be 10 feet of open air and then
No, there would be a structure.
that's what I was asking about. Is there something over the,
Not just over, but it would have sides also,
Okay.
so that it's,
like a tunnel? kind of?
yep.
Okay.
That's the inside ceiling.
Oh, okay.
And then that's the heaters that we're looking to purchase.
I know. This is, I assume, Jim, that this is permissible by fire code, or?
Well, that's what we have to find out, because
Okay.
it's the first I've heard that it was going to be something other than a flame retardant tent. The other thing that we'll have to work with the fire marshal on is also the issue of the type of heating system that you're entitled to. I know that generally in the past, we've dealt with propane and that kind of thing. And there are certain criteria for where you place it as it relates to the distance from the tent, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
We'll have to
dealt
look
with-
into this with the fire marshal.
We dealt with that last year, when we had our tent up for that
Right.
week. Yep, it had to be a certain distance from the tent,
Right.
and,
And that was a true tent, if I recall.
Yes.
When you did that, not a structure like you're proposing
Correct.
here. Right.
Tony, I mean, if it was a true tent, like as you said, that you see sometimes at restaurants or
Baytown
at
has.
festivals with,
Right now.
with a canvas.
it does have a canvas top.
Right, but a canvas wall, canvas borders, if you want to call it that. I would be much more agreeable to moving forward. I mean, to me, this just doesn't really fit within that description of a tent. I go back to what I think it was Councilman Quinn was saying about, I think we just need to be clear as to what falls within our guidelines as a tent structure versus something that could be a three-season room or, something along those lines, a little bit more permanent. And I just don't want to leave ourselves open to the precedence of,
I mean, it's about 2,500 square feet.
just the precedence of this
This is
type
the
of
one
a
you're looking
structure
to
being
with the-
conceived
That
under the terms
page
of
just
our
kind
tent.
of-
Yeah.
We're having one conversation.
No,
She asked me the question.
Go ahead, Andy, you have the floor.
Thank you. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there for consideration. If it was just a true tent with canvas walls, a canvas top, it can be put up in a few hours, taken down in a few hours, maybe have some heating units inside, used for a couple months during the winter, I can appreciate that. I would be okay with that. What I'm seeing right there, I have some difficulty believing that falls within the parameters of what is considered a tent versus some other three-season, semi-permanent, that may not be the best way of saying it, but a more robust, facility more than anything else. And I just don't want to get us into trouble with allowing this structure under a tent category, and then all of a sudden now we can't deny anybody else that wants to do it, and just keeps growing from there. So,
I would agree.
I'm very concerned about moving forward under what I see in those photos.
I would just add, Lisa, if you want to add for the record, I'm going to read from what this is. They're called, the catalog is entitled Earmarker Structures. And the page that the applicant has marked as what they are looking to have, the first structure is called Refugees Camp in Dusseldorf. And the other structure is called an industrial unit in Marmande, which would be France.
Oh, and the reason I brought that book was just so that you could see the idea of the A-frame.
Right.
If I can show you the picture, he had me take...
I'm still talking to let her know what you're looking to do.
Just hold a
Okay,
minute.
but that's
You'll have-
not exactly what we're looking to do, and that's why I was interrupting you. I'm sorry.
Yep, not a problem.
And so in
Well, everybody will
addition-
have an opportunity to chat.
Additionally, there is provided for a gas heater for a 4,000 square foot heating area. It looks like there's also, as the applicant has described to us, solid structures, glass doors, heating vents and ductwork. And this one has a garage door on it. So now, the one that you are looking to rent, what is the difference between what I've just described and what you're looking to rent?
Those are structures, large structures he's done at other places. Ours is nothing like that. Ours is more of a, I would say, an appearance of a tent. You can see the canvas roof.
All right. Go ahead, Kirby. Thank you.
So what's your purpose of giving this to us?
That, just to try to give an idea as to who the man is, what he does.
Yeah, I can clearly see the difference, but nonetheless, I still question whether what we're looking at on the smartphone falls within the guidelines of what the town considers to be a tent or some other structure.
Right.
And, and so I would propose that we need some resolution to that before we move forward in some determination as to what we want to approve or what we don't want to approve. And again, and I'm sorry to keep jumping in, if it was a normal standard canvas tent, very similar to what you see at like Don's Originals, the pub, I would be perfectly fine with that, and I would support moving forward, because that clearly falls within the parameters and guidelines of what the town perceives as a tent.
Would you be able to give us a location locally that after tonight we can table this and go and look at it? As to what you're looking at, have Jacob give you a place locally?
This is right at his property.
Where's that? I want to see it, that's a sample though, I want to see where he's done it locally. Like, does he have one he's gonna be putting up locally?
I know he has put them up and taken them down at many of the places. The reason that we went with this, and we can certainly go with a regular tent. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Our issue was safety, solely.
Sure,
Safety for customers being out there. We didn't want to worry about the snow load in Rochester.
Sure.
And have that concern that something's going to happen. So when we were discussing tents, a tent, believe me, would be a lot cheaper
Absolutely, yeah.
than doing it this way. As we were talking with him, he just had stated that the tent structures are usually more aluminum as opposed to steel, with a steel beam down it. And so with the snow load of Rochester, that's why he recommended this type of structure. Some of the wall pieces could be solid, some could be glass. so that we could look out. He said, you know, at this point, we were just looking for safety more than anything. So for us, we're more than happy to go back to a tent structure. We just really was looking for the stability that this offered. The cost of this is probably triple that of a tent.
I'm not trying to give you a hard time,
No.
we're just trying to, we have to be careful with what.
I understand.
If we're going down a road we haven't gone down before, to make sure that.
And because it is not a permanent structure, it is not meant to be, it's not put in so that it would be a permanent structure. That is why he still classified it under a tent. The roof of it is canvas, and even though the walls are solid, they interlock for the walls, so they do go up, and he said probably 6 hours or so, we would actually be able to put them up.
And that's a good point, because I guess then our analysis kind of turns on, do we think of a tent in terms of its material or in terms of its temporary nature? If we look more towards a temporary nature, this is a tent. If we're looking more towards material, it's not. So that's kind of the.
And as I said, we're more than happy to revert back to a tent. We were just truly looking for safety.
Right.
If you do revert back to a tent, you bring up a good point, the snow load is the issue. the
Yeah,
safety.
It is.
Is there a way to incorporate bracing inside a tent system too?
The way
Minimize snow load issues.
that this man, he's been dealing with tents, and he has a whole rental business and everything. He said this is the safest and best way to go, so that's why we went this route.
And it does have a canvas top, so
Yes.
just because of the peak, I guess, helps with the
poles,
snow.
right,
Yeah.
that's the steel.
Yeah. I certainly support you looking to expand during the winter months, because the, summer seems short, as does the fall sometimes.
Sure does.
I'd like to know what, I don't want the applicant or anyone to go through the extent of setting a public hearing yet. I think, for me at least, without knowing a little more information, maybe the fire marshal weighing in would help as far as from a safety perspective. Because certainly we don't want to shortchange for semantics, safety, or you being able to expand and have a productive business during the winter months.
I did approach him first, of course, and talked with him, and he said that he didn't have, he didn't have all these brochures and
Sure.
information, but from what I described to him, he said the main issue is that the length of time I wanted to have it up went beyond what he could
Yeah,
approve,
yeah.
and therefore I needed to come before the town.
Well, that's another concern. I have a concern about the length of time, because if the precedent is set where you can put up a 2,500 square foot, what I would call structure, now you may have other entities coming in looking to put up a 2,500, square foot structure that is changing the nature or the character of wherever that entity is.
Yeah.
I mean, if Don's were to come in and ask for a similar
Right.
thing, we would not then to say, well, you can't put it up halfway into a parking lot, or depending on what they're looking to do, because it's changing the dynamics of the restaurant. It's
Right.
going from a restaurant now to doubling its square footage year-round by use of this outdoor. I mean, this, to me, is more of it's like no different than a modular unit.
So, yeah, you could
I
live
mean,
in
it's
it.
something you can park out back for 3 months and drive away. It's not, so there's a time length. I mean, if we were looking at a month, that's different than 4 months during the winter. We live in Rochester, New York. If you're looking at a way to expand your square footage, then maybe there's another alternative that you'd have to explore than trying to come back every winter and seek another 5-month, 4-month extension on a structure like this, because
Right.
now,
Think about that.
so not only the fire safety aspect, but I'd like to know how, we've had modular units in town before for durations. I mean, this is a structure that I think is exceeding a tent. I mean, Shadow Pines used to have a tent. And maybe we can look at or how that was classified during its seasons. Don's has a tent, but yeah, I have concerns about the precedent that this is going to set, and for any and all other entities like Baytown, who may want to come and put a 3,000 square foot structure in the middle of its green.
Yeah, they have a tent right now, but it's the summer.
But it's a
not
tent.
year-round.
Right, so that's, I think Paul outlined that there is some due diligence to be done on this, so I would propose tabling this.
May I address the issue?
Sure.
Okay, so you mentioned the fact that we would be setting a precedence. Our neighbors right next door at Agway have 2 to 3 tents up most of the year, and they're visible all the way around. Ours would not be visible, only from the corner of the property. The rest of it is completely hidden by our building. That's the one front side is the only place you'd be able to see a corner of it. The rest of it is not visible at all by anybody except from the building itself. So in regards to visibility, like I said, our neighbors have tents up for structures, whatever you want to call them, for most of the year as they're growing having their greenhouses and having the other things that they store there.
Is it a greenhouse or a tent?
Not sure what they call,
Okay,
what
so
it would be
that is more of
classified
a
as,
question for-
but
I see Mark nodding at me. That's more of a question for town staff to
I haven't looked at it
maybe...
specifically, but I would, if it's with Agway, it would probably fall under a greenhouse similar to what
Right.
Grossman's has or other things. I mean, that falls under
Right.
more
Okay.
of our ag and markets and
Agricultural
agricultural
Yeah, all right.
code.
Lori,
but-
do you have to take any trees down to,
Nope.
everything stays where it is now?
we purposely are doing it around. We're just keeping it so that it would, like it would encompass our fire pits, but we know that we can't use them inside, so we would put little tabletops on them so people would be able to sit and use them as a tabletop. It would encompass about six or 7 picnic tables, and that's it. Everything else would be outside of it, except for then the other tent would be the cornhole boards. So we're just looking for an area to be able to enjoy some of the outdoors during the wintertime, to be able to comply with some of the requests of the patrons.
So Lori, so I'm assuming the big tent over this patio area, so the 33 by 66.
Correct.
And then the smaller tent, the 30 by 30, will be,
I think it's over here on that side.
Yep, it extends a little bit, in his drawing, in my opinion, it extended a little bit farther, I would say, because it'll come before the swing.
Do they
Okay.
connect?
So this is an older picture, but, and the swing may have moved because it doesn't have more of the current, but it would only cover, because it doesn't show the cornhole boards there, but it would only cover over the boards themselves. So it would be on this side of the tent, or this side of the tree, and that side of the swing. So,
and that would have heat as well?
yes.
And, oh, sorry. And that would just be grass, on the grass?
Yes,
Okay.
So we're talking 2 structures.
2 separate ones.
So,
All right. And
One-
is the cornhole structure basically the same as the bigger one, just a smaller?
Correct.
Okay, so you're looking for approval for 2 tents, 2 structures.
It's easier than trying to make the walls jog off,
Okay.
so, to fit it.
Attached to the ground somehow? How does this?
Yes, it is anchored.
Okay, so they'll be permanent, you'd have to put in either concrete anchors or?
They are concrete anchor blocks.
Okay, I'm thinking something similar to the amphitheater.
No.
It's seasonal, it's anchored, you know, it can go up and down, and then you've got, you know, the superstructure over that, that's got a canvas top to it. I don't know, if we classify that as a tent, you know, but obviously.
classified actually as an amphitheater.
Amphitheater. But obviously, you know, there would be some permanent
Yeah.
footers to, you know, anchor, bolt this thing down to. Obviously, you have to worry about wind loads as well as,
Yeah.
you know, snow loads of a structure that big to
More wind.
hold it to the ground.
So I think I've heard a couple of board members indicate that they would like to table this to gather some information. I would propose that we ask PRC to take a look at it, add it to your agenda next Wednesday, Mark, if you would. And because we will have building department, fire marshal, we'll also have, you know, the planning zoning side of things as well. And I'd ask that take a look at that. I heard Councilwoman Metzler indicate that is there a local application that we might be able to see, and if we could find out from Jacob if there was some place that we might be able to go see that structure and how it's set up, how it's applied. That would be beneficial as well.
Who would you like me to have Jacob contact?
I'd like, I think I'd like to have him contact Mr. Costello, if you would, and he will coordinate that. Seeing how his name is tagged to this, we will keep it in that bucket. And I won't give Mr. Valentine any more work than I've already gave him this week, I've given him this week, so.
So, in regards to the structure itself, part of why we are looking for that length of time is because of the snow in Rochester. So we're hoping to put it up before the snow comes heavy and then take it down after the snow is gone. So that is part of the reason why we chose the time frame.
Okay.
We wouldn't necessarily need it that long, but I don't want to be out there and in unsafe conditions trying to remove a structure while there's a foot of snow or 2 foot of snow, not knowing Rochester, during that time frame. So it really is best to go up in November and then, you know, come down in the beginning of March.
Okay.
And
All right.
I would propose that, based on what we've heard tonight, that, and I'm kind of with Councilman Moore, that if this were your standard tent, like we're used to, like a wedding tent, I would not see the need for a hearing. But now, absolutely, there will have to be a public hearing if we even get to that point, for neighbors to weigh in.
And I would still have the option to switch this to a regular tent then.
Sure.
Certainly.
For that.
Okay?
Sure.
Because that's all we're looking to do. Like I said, the only reason we went this way was truly for safety of people.
Yeah.
Because he said that this is, with Rochester, this is the safest way to go.
Yeah.
So we're more than happy to,
And so what happens at the beginning of March, and there's 3 feet of snow on the ground? Are they gonna still be able to take that down safely and?
because of the fact that March, it's going to be melting, so whether it's into the middle of March or the second or third, we would, as soon as the snow is down, we would take it down. As soon as the conditions are safe.
I think one of the other things that would be helpful for PRC, Mark and Kaz, might be, as we're having the conversation, is some feedback from the experts from Hank Parker, and ask about tents, snow load, that type of thing.
Tony, that's a very good point. They did submit an 86-page, which I did not want to bore you with, but an 86-page document identifying the structure and its snow loading capacities, that type of thing. So there is good documentation to identify how it deals with snow loads.
That's
But we
nice.
still should be able to bring Mr. Parker's group in.
That's
and talk
nice.
to them about it.
So my point was, I would be interested in their input feedback as it relates to snow load on a normal tent. Because if an alternative is to put up a tent, a true tent, and we have the experts basically saying, we don't recommend this because of snow load, it's dangerous, liability issues, all of that other, I think that would probably be good to know as well.
We will take care of it.
Okay, is there a motion on the table to table this particular item?
I'll move.
Second.
It's been moved by Rob, seconded by Andy. Is there any further discussion at this point? First, board members, anything additional you'd like to see? Okay, staff, is there anything additional questions that you might have for some next steps?
I like your idea about bringing Mr. Parker's group in and inviting Lori with them to come to a PRC. We can ask all sorts of questions from every angle and get that result for you. Get a report back to you.
Great. All
And
right.
Tony,
Yes.
I just want to add in, if I can, they may, Hank Parker, or the vendor, may be able to look at the tent and possibly put additional columns, put additional steel or metal, borders around it to strengthen the capabilities of a tent, in addition to what they normally would do in order to help with snow loads and so forth. So there may be some other options that they could take a look at in order to satisfy what the needs are.
Okay, all right. All right, and...
I do have one quick question.
Yes.
I'm just curious why you would look for or would desire more of a canvas side as opposed to a solid side.
For me, it comes down to what is the definition and what are the guidelines of what the town perceives to be a tent.
Temporary.
And so I think Rob said it much better than I did. You know, this is kind of a modular unit per se, and I'm not sure that, or I'm not comfortable with having that fall under the umbrella of a tent within the town guidelines, because I think it clearly opens up the door for other businesses or other entities to look at that type of a structure in a way to fall under a tent umbrella, but have some other type of permanent use or some other type of long-term use that may not necessarily be what is in the best interest of the town. And so,
So is there another category that it would fall in under,
That's what
as
we're
opposed to a
discussing.
tent?
That's what we're
You
discussing.
can have that discussion under PRC with
Yeah.
the experts.
And at the end of the day, it may not be allowed at all.
yeah. So and I don't think 2 weeks is gonna, waiting to the next work session is gonna delay anything as far as any winter weather that comes in. I think that it's due diligence on our part in making sure that we're comfortable with what this is categorized and where it falls within the guidelines or policies, regulations of the town, so that we don't set ourselves up for a precedence that maybe we're not comfortable with or we can't control after this.
Because you're looking for a tent permit. That's essentially what it is a permit. And we don't give permits to semi-permanent structures.
Well, you make a good point. I mean, if you had a lawnmower operation that were you repairing lawnmowers and you didn't want to add more area to your
This could be
property,
cold storage.
this could be cold, this could be a new area that you utilize for working on lawnmowers or whatever, and it would stay there on a permanent basis, you know that.
It's not as if, certainly we understand that this would be, sturdier than a tent. So it's not a question of, well, why wouldn't you want this instead of a tent? That's not a question at all. That's not relevant to what we're talking about. Because ideally then we'd want a log cabin there or a sturdier structure, because that'd be even more safe. And that's even more irrelevant. So at this point, I think we have to see whether this is truly appropriate under a permit application. It may not be.
And taking the time to flush that out, I think, is worth it.
Yeah.
And we can make a determination in 2 weeks, and I do not think that's going to have any impact on winter weather
Yeah.
implications. We all want the business to be successful,
Right.
trust me. Clearly it is. But we just need, from a governmental perspective, we just need to be careful that the decisions that we make are, consistent with not setting a bad precedence moving forward.
And I think we also have to consider the time frame. You mentioned a 4-month time frame, but then you also mentioned, well, as soon as the snow clears, as soon as I think then we'd have to probably institute some sort of sanctions if you go beyond March 1st. That would have to be in place, monetary or otherwise, in order to keep it up, to keep that up. And that's another consideration that would be a precedent as well, because we don't have that with tents. That's not a concern.
Right, and as I had stated earlier, I had said prior to St. Patrick's Day, so I was trying to give myself that 1 or 2 week window of weather, the change of the weather up here, to know sometimes we have snow gone early, and last year, snow was gone somewhat early, and we had water up until June.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly a practical way to think of it. I think we have to think of it in terms of a permit and have some sort of finite end to it.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Seeing no further discussion, we will table this matter. We'll bring it back at our October, would be our October 11th, if I recall.
23rd,
The 9th
no
is
meeting
canceled.
on the 11th, or 9th.
9th,
9th.
that's canceled.
That's, it
Right.
is, it's a Jewish holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, we'll ferret this out, we'll identify when we can get it back here on the agenda for the discussion. Okay.
I have to leave.
Yep. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the matter is tabled. Thank you, Andy. Okay, we will move to action items. We have, the first item is 3 Penweb Park, a request for an abandonment of a drainage easement, and we have Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This recently came to our attention. I'm passing around a few handouts. The first is kind of an aerial photo, and once everybody has one, I'll kind of review that. And then the attached easement that goes along with it. So this recently came to our attention. New homeowner at 3 Penweb Park bought the house and is going through the closing, realized or came across that we have several easements on the property. You can look on it. The pink is kind of what the old creek line used to follow. If you go to the last page under the easement, you can kind of see we took an overall drainage easement back in the day. So this was back in '66, before Penweb was even there. So it has just kind of where the creek used to follow. So it went through there. There was intent on the map to have that abandoned. Subsequent to that, obviously as development came, we piped the drainage way through that area. At least it pops out kind of behind RVs and some other areas through there. So we've now have the green easement is the piped area, as well as, you know, a blue area that's another drainage easement for that. So they're asking for the pink area to be abandoned. I don't see a need for it any longer. It followed the old creek line. With the piping that was put in place and everything else that's in there, we have you know, sufficient easements to cover our infrastructure that's in there. It did indicate that it was to be abandoned. I'm not sure, you know, why it wasn't, or why it wasn't completed in the past.
Right.
Penweb Park is newer than '66, so that means at some point in time should have been abandoned at that point in time. You know, it wasn't, so it's just kind of a cleanup of something that I don't believe is no longer necessary.
Seems reasonable.
The other two stay in place, no change, no need to change, and no need to do anything different with them.
Nope, so I would actually ask to abandon a portion of the easement on this property. As I said, it kind of pops out behind the Allstate building.
Right.
So the stream still has portions of it, so I wouldn't abandon the drainage easement in its entirety. But just for the portion of that, you know, kind of comes through this property and just through their yard.
I'd make a motion that we grant the request to abandon the easement for number 3 Penweb Park.
I second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? So no further discussion by the board. Any additional input from staff on this matter?
Nope.
We haven't already discussed, or it is not already in the record. Okay, seeing none. Those in favor, aye. Opposed? And Mark, you will have that
I'll prepare the resolution for the board.
for the board for next Wednesday.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Send that over to Mike.
All right, we'll move on to item B. Item B is RFP for Shadow Pines Conceptual Master Plan. As the board recalls, we'd asked staff to go out and submit an RFP or request input for an RFP for a conceptual master plan for Shadow Pines. We did receive 5 different feedback proposals that came in. Jim has prepared a matrix of general information, including cost when it was received. And
That's not on my agenda.
What?
RFP?
What do you mean? That says RFP for Shadow Pines Conceptual Master Plan.
And the wrong one got published.
I don't have that. The one on the
Yeah,
table is
no,
this one.
I don't have it either.
It's the
This
one
came
we
in the-
put out last
I was going
week.
to say, it's the
Came
one
an email.
it's the one that we put out on the,
Really?
yep.
Yeah.
They came in the
Absolutely.
email?
Okay.
It's on the
Yeah.
website.
Came on the website, that's what came in the
All right.
It
email.
was printed last
Let's
Friday.
just grab one for the table.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Better add to it.
so we'll take just a 5-second pause, and we'll go back. So we have at least one board member that has a different, and it sounds like those are the possible culprit, and that's okay.
It's not
What
on the table.
I'm sorry?
It's not on that
It's
one.
not on that. So that's that is the incorrect. So The correct agenda, and again, for the record, under action items, item B as in boy, it's an RFP for Shadow Pines Conceptual Master Plan. And so I'll just go back and I'll just indicate that, again, we requested that staff go out and request proposals. They have been submitted. We requested that they be in on Friday the 20th. Most of them were. One came in late. Mr. Costello has provided us with all of those particular RFPs. And so I know that there is a lot there to digest. And so the discussion that I want to have this evening is for next steps, because we discussed the fact that the RFPs would come in, we take a look, and we would try to stay somewhat on track to pass a resolution the first meeting in October, if possible, to award a contract to then have the conceptual master plan turned in by the 22nd of November. And then from there, the board have an opportunity to accept that master plan as our path forward for the Shadow Pines property, that 206 acres excluding the Clark House, the 206 acres of Shadow Pines. So with that, and recognizing that you have received a lot of this information here recently, I would ask the board's comfort level for next steps. Would the board like to have a short work session before our legislative session next week? Or
Would that slow the process?
it would not. Again, the RFP had indicated that we would look to award on October 2nd.
Okay. Then I'm fine having a work session next week in advance of the legislative session to review this, to discuss this after review of the information.
So you'd be looking for a motion to
Table.
table it until 1 week from tonight?
And 1 week from
And work
tonight, and then
session.
we would, I would ask Anna in the clerk's office, who will put together the appropriate legal, and we'll call for a special work session meeting for next Wednesday evening.
I think that's reasonable to keep us on the time frame, so I will make that motion.
Second.
Okay, so we will table, and we'll look to come back here at 6 o'clock next, don't get her, 6 o'clock next Wednesday in this room. And then I would ask that as you're looking at these proposals, if you have any specific questions, more importantly, if you need anything that staff can provide, I would just ask that we work with Mr. Costello on that, and then he could make sure that he either brings it or forwards it to all of us ahead of time.
Sounds good.
Yes, thank you.
Okay? So it's been moved, seconded to table. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll let the minutes reflect that it's 4-0. Mr. Moore had to leave the house. Okay, this brings us now down to informational items. And the first and only information item we have is a mixed-use development district discussion. That was an item the board asked to have on the agenda for broader discussion.
So yes, I had that as an action item. So anyway, yes, I want to thank you, Tony, for bringing this to the agenda this evening. I think that as the mixed-use development district sort of comes online here over the next several years, and really due to its scope, its size and scope, location in the town, and sort of long-term ramifications, both positive and negative, on any kind of development, I believe that it's in the best interest for this district to be likened to the Four Corners Development Zoning District or LaSalle's Landing District, where oversight is at the discretion of the town board. It would come to the town board rather than the planning board. Again, because of the significance of the size and scope and generational impact that these projects would have on the town moving forward, I think it's important to have the correct and necessary oversight by the town board, the elected representatives in this town. So as I reflect on this, I think it is in the best interest to, again, work on the mixed-use district like the Four Corners district. The precedent's been set, so I don't think it would be too difficult to make any modifications, but I just wanted to solicit your feedback on this and hopefully make a motion that we explore changing this to town board oversight from planning board as currently devised.
Right, I think in this, we're keeping a transparent form of government. One of the things is when something new like this mixed use comes about, that perhaps it's more in line with the elected officials to shepherd what is happening in such a district and be accountable for it. And I'm not sure why we didn't do it at the beginning. Just the same way we did Four Corners and LaSalle's. They came together more or less because there were so many opportunities to help the businesses to succeed, but you had to go through the loops of the zoning and so on, and it took a little, under the town, it opened up a little more for the ability to have a business succeed. So, but that's not exactly what we're all looking for in this. This is more to make sure that the planning for the future of that district has accountability with us as the elected representatives, and I can see it makes sense, and it may resonate with the residents as well.
I think there's merit in certainly having it fall under the purview of the town board, and in terms of the elected officials who usually shepherded this concept to make sure that we meet with the true intent going forward. It only makes sense to have it be consistently with the same reviewing board and permitting board.
Okay. So it is currently set up and it is a district that goes through the planning board approval. So it means that the ordinance would have to be modified, which means that there would have to be a public hearing. We would open that up. So if the board would like to pursue that, there could be a resolution calling for a public hearing at October 2nd, the October 2nd board meeting, with a hearing probably in the first meeting in November, is what I would guess, in order to meet the minimum requirements for advertising. So if the board is, if that's the direction the board wants to take, then we will work with Mr. Horwitz and take a look to see if we can get that in for the next legislative session, to see what changes and amendments have to be made, and make sure that we can get those in place for the resolution. So we will explore that.
Yep, I'll make a motion for a resolution to be prepared for October 2nd,
Second that.
setting a public hearing.
Okay. We'll double check with staff and Dick just to make sure that we can get the proper changes together to do that. But
Thank you.
We have our marching orders to take a look at that. Okay. Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So, That brings us to the end of the agenda, and there being no further business to come before the September 25th, 2019 work session. The work session will stand adjourned at 8:10 p.m. And as I was reminded, the next meeting will not be until the 23rd for a work session because of the Jewish holiday that will be at our next originally scheduled. Okay, thank you to PCTV, thank you to everyone that did participate this evening.